it's not great to hear that we're not doing the proper things, but we're trying to do the proper things with what we've got left with our mandate.
Of the municipal plans adopted in New Brunswick recently, and I've reviewed many of them, this is by far the least intelligible and functional plan.
It would have made my life and the life of government much easier had the same proponent that is offering it today been the successful proponent, providing the best service going forward.
Welcome to This Week Uncut, where we take a look at the top stories of the week from CHCO-TV and The Courier. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon. We begin this week in St. Andrews with a public hearing of objections on the municipal plan.
I was sad I could not attend because we had two council meetings the same night, so I went to St. Stephen with Florence, and you were here with Patrick. And big shout out to our CHCO Next Generation. Shamie, Jake, and Adam were there doing camera because there were so many people that wanted to attend. They moved the hearing to the W.C. O'Neill Arena Theater as opposed to the council chambers. So seating change for the folks who wanted to come out and share their concerns. What was it like?
Yeah, I think we should start a bit with what a municipal plan is and sort of how we arrived at this exact moment. A municipal plan is a 10-year guiding document on the future of land development and land use planning. All of that sort of future and the vision for the town really is what the municipal plan is. And a municipal plan is often it has a complementary zoning bylaw that gets into the finite details of zoning and specifics and all of that other stuff. That is coming soon. We're not going to discuss the zoning bylaw today. I don't want to confuse anybody. But the municipal plan, this started in 2024. So the Southwest Service Commission is the authors of the municipal plan, and they do a lot of the zoning and permitting. People who have sought a permit would know that. They did a background study in 2024, which would have sort of looked at this new amalgamated area. And the reason that they're doing this, because I did hear from residents who said, well, we just did this, why are we doing it again? And the reason that we're doing it again is because the province amalgamated Shamcook and Bayside into the town of St. Andrews. And so as a result of that, those plans needed to be redone so that they could incorporate Shamcook and Bayside. So all of that happened, and so the Southwest Service Commission says that they held 11 public engagement sessions outside of meetings with council and planning advisory, and so now we're at the public hearing of objections.
Okay, and before we dive into what the concerns were of the public, let's look at the timeline for when this has to be finalized. What are we looking at here? We know that we also have municipal elections coming up this May. So we have the current council in place. Is it something that is looking to be passed before we get to a new council? How much time do we have?
Well, if I had a magic 8-ball, I might be able to tell you whether or not it's going to get passed. It has not received first reading. It is in its draft form. The council has until January 1st, 2028. So little under 2 years, effectively. But I'm sure the province doesn't want municipalities to be waiting until the last minute to submit these plans, because they will likely want to take a look at them and review them and that sort of thing. And so when they move forward with this, they will, if they make any substantial changes to the plan based on what we're about to discuss, which were the concerns that were raised last night, they will have to go back and do another public hearing of objections because of the Community Planning Act. So it's not over yet, but the other situation is that we have an election coming in May of 2026. So that's going to shake things up a bit, and it might be different faces around the table with different ideologies and different politics. So certainly there's a lot of things going on right now.
Wow, municipal politics, never a dull moment. We want to talk about what the community concerns were. Obviously, when we talk about this happening post-amalgamation, I think anyone who lives in a municipality that has undergone amalgamation already understands that there are concerns, particularly from wards that were under a rural plan before and now have been amalgamated and have to be under the municipal plan. So that's going to be something in and of its own, almost like its own theme when we talk Bayside and Shamcook, but there were also concerns when it came to the town plat.
Yes, the concerns that largely I heard were that the plan was confusing and hard to understand. The maps were too small and sort of hard to decipher. One lady even said Highway 127 is not designated on the map. They were told that it would be designated and it never happened. I mean, the 127 is the only way in or out of St. Andrews. It's a particular point in the geography that people could identify as part of those maps to sort of gauge where they are. But you can sort of see that, that sort of loop, right? And so the general theme was that it was confusing. It was dense, and I've read it. And I've read a few of these over my career, and it is on the denser side, I will say, but I'm not a planner, so I hold no expertise on this issue. And then we heard about density, and we've been hearing about density. I had, I think, 3 letters to the editor that came in about this plan and the zoning bylaw to some degree, about density. And density is always associated with multi-unit residential housing. And the town has identified housing as something that they want to prioritize, in particular, affordable housing. You might think of the MBCC project, housing project, that has sort of kind of been dragged along because there is a community college here. And so those folks need a place to live. So density is associated with large buildings with multiple units. And so that will scare people who live in the plat of St. Andrews, which this density is going to be allowed to occur under the current plan. It's in draft form. Nothing is set in stone. They haven't even brought it to first reading. Okay. But the number of dwelling units went from 4 to 8. So that is on a single building. It went from 4 to 8 in a certain number of square feet. So that is doubling the number of dwelling units in the downtown plat that could be possible. So that would certainly be scary for people who have chosen to live in the plat of St. Andrews for its character and for its intimacy.
I was going to say, when you have a National Historic District as your downtown, obviously that adds another nuance to this whole conversation that has to be taken into consideration that maybe a newer community might not have to consider, a community without those designations. But when you think about that, it doesn't necessarily mean just the buildings themselves. It could be even the properties, the lots themselves. I think when we talk about densification, sometimes the idea of green space also becomes something that could be compromised. Mm-hmm. And the other thing about the plan is that they've sort of broken up the zoning R1, R2, R3, C1, C2, C3. And so that also was confusing to folks, especially in the rural areas where I heard people say, I'm classified as this and my neighbor is classified as this, and I don't know how to make sense of it. Why am I over here and they're over here? We did hear from one of the public consultations that there was someone who purchased a lot of land out in, I believe, Bayside, and intended on developing that land, but it has been zoned as agricultural under the plan, and so they can't do that because the province has actually asked municipalities to prioritize agricultural land. Okay, wow. Okay, so when it gets into the meat of this meeting, what were some of the speakers that stood out to you that raised points that had a lot of support from the other audience members, the other residents? Well, every time someone finished, they clapped. Okay. There were about 40 odd-ish people. A few got up and left at certain points. The meeting was about an hour and 40 minutes, so certainly a lengthy one. Lisa Caskey stood out to me, I think, as someone who really made some valid points. Some of her comments were extremely sharp. But she's a retired planner, and so she has some sort of
lens on this that perhaps many other residents don't.
She also sent a letter to the editor, to the Courier. She was quite concerned. She wanted to make sure that the community was aware of what's going on. I think the great thing about being in a small town is when our neighbors want us to pay attention, they do their best to make sure everyone is. So Lee was definitely proactive about making sure her neighbors were aware of what was going on. But tell us a little bit about what were some of her main points.
Yeah, so her main points again was that the plan was confusing, unintelligible is what she said, that it was a risky experiment and St. Andrews was going to lose. So it was a strong statement on her part. She said she compared the plan to other municipal plans that had been recently passed in the province, and this was the worst. So strong comments, and urged the council to slow down, take a minute, and perhaps revisit the plan.
Okay.
Take a listen.
My name is Lee Sokaski. I'm a longtime resident and a retired planner who spent decades working on and studying successful government-based plans of the local to international level, all with high user participation. And I love my town. And I really appreciate the remarks that have already been made, because I'll shorten up what I'm saying here, but I think they've been right on. This is not the right plan for St. Andrews with its unique identity and needs. I feel it will cause conflict and confusion and irrevocably alter the original town's character, not for the better. It doesn't carry forward some of the important goals found in the current Shamcook and Bayside plans either. Of the municipal plans adopted in New Brunswick recently, and I've reviewed many of them, this is by far the least intelligible and functional plan. Municipal plans are meant to be overarching guidance documents that respond to the community needs and provincial requirements, and they should be clear and understandable. I object that this council has created a municipal plan that is radically different from all other municipal plans in New Brunswick. Your new design eliminates the overarching vision, directions, and priorities that anchor the 10-year plans of actions of other municipal plans, in our own current one too. Your plan focuses entirely on the actions, 100 policies and proposals, without providing any rationale. Why are we doing this? Or prioritization. What do we do first? This plan is all arms and legs, going in all directions, sometimes conflicting. It is a distinctly technical and user-unfriendly document. And there's no head on the body. The overall guidance that other municipal plans have in their opening sections is gone from this one. This is a risky experiment where St. Andrews could be a big loser. Our town needs a more reliable plan. I object that the plan, unlike our current one, doesn't recognize and does little to protect our unique national heritage, a critical cornerstone of our identity, lifestyle, and our economy. It ignores that our centuries-old town plant is one of Canada's few designated National Historic Districts. It doesn't take into quiet consideration our identity as one of Canada's 20 most beautiful towns and one of Canada's top tourist destinations, these based on significant part on our historic buildings and streetscapes. Our past is a critical part of our future. Our heritage identity isn't a nicety, it's a necessity. We can't and we don't want to be any town Canada, but this plan seems to take us there.
That was Lee Sokaski, a retired planner and a resident of the town of St. Andrews.
Okay, so we are in for quite a conversation, I am sure, when we have more residents to come with their concerns.
Yeah, some people really raised a lot of questions about density and housing, and those are often intimately tied to each other. But then others also called for balance.
Well, there was this one guy there that night, and he was supportive of the developers. And I'm going, why is there somebody sitting here on the board, the council, that's in supportive of the gentleman that just did a subdivision? And then I'm going, they're going to be calling the St. Andrews the subdivision, I'll tell you, because it's just going to explode. You start putting, they're doing it in Vancouver, they're at Fredericton, they're doing it in Moncton, they're making these 4 family homes, 8 family homes, buildings. It won't stop, right? Anyway, the other thing is it says, market the lots to developers and incentivize on the basis of municipal contribution to the subdivision infrastructure. This town is not built for subdivisions. I mean, if you guys, the council, and you yourself, Mayor, I mean, yeah, you people got to wake up real quick because you're going to ruin this town. The historical relevance of this town is going to go down the drain.
It's all well and good to say we want to keep this town small. I want to keep my town small. Don't get me wrong here. But we have to try to hire staff. Try to find them a place to live. We have to have some place for people to go. Not everybody can come here and afford to buy one of those big towns in the town plat and renovate. I did. But could we afford to do, like, not everybody can afford. My kids can't come here because they can't afford to live here. I got a son here living here right now, living in a basement because he can't afford to buy a house in the town of St. Andrews. But he wants to raise his kids in the town of St. Andrews. Do I like subdivisions? No. My father lives out there and I hate that place. But there's a purpose for them. But there's also a purpose for our town plat that does not need to change and does not. I lived in Calgary where they sold my house, a single family house, and they put in a 4-plex on a 1 lot, house lot. That's not St. Andrews, and that's not what we need at all. But there is a place for subdivisions, and there is a place for apartment buildings, not in the town plat. But this town does need housing.
Okay, so now we are heading to the newly amalgamated areas. We're talking about Bayside and Shamcook and how residents there are responding to the draft of the municipal plan.
Yeah, so both Bayside and Shamcook had rural plans, and so there would have been some semblance of rules, so to speak. But certainly this plan and the zoning bylaw take that to a whole new level. I think what I heard from the rural community was some sort of expectation that they wouldn't have to be involved in this process, that they could be removed from this process. I think you're about to hear an individual say, keep your fingers off Shamcook and Bayside. They can't give it back. The province has decided that these areas are now part of the municipality. They are part of the municipality. There's no going back now. So, but there is certainly some communication that can happen there and potentially some changes that might meet the needs of those folks.
Okay, and I think it's an important point to highlight that you've already made in this show is that the municipality itself isn't responsible for the decision to amalgamate. Nevertheless, they are dealing with the reality of what that means when it comes to incorporating these wards into a municipal plan that serves all. It's a big job.
It certainly hasn't made their job any easier. Take a listen to 2 residents, Craig Smith and Jeff Muir.
I represent 5 people and I object to what's happening here. We need to pump the brakes and stop this nonsense. We've got till 2028. Given what happened with the market, the egg in our face, the way we looked across Canada, we need to stop, listen to what everybody's saying, and maybe come back to this at some other point down the road. This doesn't need to be solved by April, doesn't need to be solved by June, doesn't even be solved by next December. We've got time. Time is on our side. And I urge everybody to use it.
This plan, like it was mentioned, you've opened yourselves up to do whatever you want in this town. I don't care. You can go to hell your own way. Get your fingers out of Bayside and Shamcook. You don't need to be messing with us. I don't care what the province told you had to do. Pushing this now, wrong idea. I don't want to see this thing pushed into anything before the absolute last deadline, because I've been away. I work long haul driving. I come home and I'm met with essentially a fait accompli. I don't think you have it. As far as I'm concerned, you're never going to have it. None of this makes any sense. What I have seen of this paperwork, I'm wondering whether or not they actually passed English, because none of it makes sense. There is no flow to it whatsoever. It's like you picked out what you thought were the best pieces that you've seen in anybody else's plan, threw them on a piece of paper and said, here we go, this is what we're doing. No, none of it makes any sense. Not one bit. Especially when you're moving back into, like I said, I've looked at what restrictions have been placed on my own property. Once again, original King's Grant, longer than this town has been in existence. Now I can't do what I need to do with my property, but you guys can do whatever the hell you want. And people who have come in from outside, like I say, my family's been here 240, 250 years. I don't need people coming in from outside saying, oh, I love the town, but I don't like the way you do things.
That was Craig Smith and Jeff Muir speaking to council at the public hearing of objections. So some tough comments there, certainly some sharp ones that the council, they were sort of vigorously taking notes. So there's a clearly a desire for the plan to change, or for some sort of cooperation between residents who are providing the feedback and council who are sort of shaping this plan. I really do want to stress, though, this plan has not gone to first reading. It is a draft, and if they make substantial changes under the Community Planning Act, they will be required to hold another public hearing of objections. This is not over yet. There is still more time. So this is sort of the first step toward getting a plan that sort of meets that balance.
Do I dare ask, what happens now that we have these comments from the community? Where does this input go to potentially alter the municipal plan draft that we have now to better accommodate people's needs? How much is that factored in? I guess we can't really tell till we see the next draft, but it's interesting for people to know how their feedback can become a part of their town's plan going forward.
Yeah, so it will go back to Xander Gopin, the senior planner with the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission. All that feedback, he was sort of taking notes, although he was accused of not taking notes during the meeting.
So it is recorded, so yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then he, held up his little tablet and said, I'm taking notes, I promise. So that it will go back to them. They will sort of make adjustments. They'll bring those back to council for discussion. I'm not quite sure when that discussion is going to happen or how soon it can happen. This would be a difficult thing to sort of turn over in a week because council is meeting on Monday, so or less than a week, I guess. Certainly the next steps are sort of a little bit unclear, but I do know that it's gone back to the Southwest Service Commission, and they'll make the changes that they feel need to be made.
And I think it'll be fun for people at home to follow along on this show. As we follow the municipal plan going forward, you'll be able to see where things like these comments, this feedback, you can go on our YouTube channel right now, CHCO-TV, if you missed the meeting and you want to watch the entire hearing of objections to the St. Andrews Municipal Plan draft. That is on our YouTube page. It's also airing on television as well. Check the TV guide for those times. But I think it is really interesting for people to follow and see how their input. We're always on the show trying to encourage people more and more to get involved in the conversation, to come out to meetings and to understand what's going on in their communities. So this is a great way to show people that when you are paying attention, when you do provide your feedback, you can actually influence the direction of where things go.
Consultation is certainly the most important part of every level of government. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to speak with Deputy Mayor Kate Akagi on Council's thoughts about the public hearing of objections.
The key thing is the province dictates what we must do. We try to not to make it so that we're at the last minute trying to get this done.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth. We're staying here in St. Andrews, where you had the chance to speak with Deputy Mayor, Acting Mayor Kate Akagi of the town of St. Andrews after the public hearing of objections to the draft of the municipal plan. What were her thoughts? I know we didn't hear from council during the meeting. What was she able to say after the fact? I know it's still pretty fresh and still a lot to consider.
Yeah, so I think the most important part about the public hearing of objections is the council is not allowed to respond or enter into debate. They just have to sit and listen. So that was certainly a long meeting to sit and listen, but it is a good process for council to sort of gauge where people's thoughts are, concerns are. The deputy mayor said, we sort of have to take this information in, listen to what they've had to say. She said they might bring it back, in the beginning of March and sort of have that discussion. But certainly she wasn't sure because council actually hasn't met since the meeting, and they want to do so before they sort of start talking about it in an open meeting or like at a regular council meeting, I should say. So certainly she thought that some of the comments were a bit harsh, but that the meeting went well.
I was shocked that people didn't understand the document. I didn't at first, I have to admit that. And there are things in there that I don't understand because the jargon is not in my language. I, was a teacher, not a planner. But we have the expertise and we try to lean on them, and they're great guys to have as experts to explain things. I mean, they've explained it at every meeting that we've had. They have answered, and taken notes, even though they don't look like it is. Even I took notes last night, but to be accused that we're not trying to do our best, we are elected representatives, the council is, and I think we try to do our best for this town. We're very pro this town. I mean, I was born here, right on Indian Point. So I feel I have a connection. But I find as mayor, sometimes my hands are tied because as mayor, you cannot voice your opinion. You're supposed to listen, hear, and do what council wants. Well, our planners, especially Xander, has taken notes. He's going to rework it into the draft. This is only a draft. That's what kills me, is it's not the final copy. It's not exactly like the old one, definitely not, but that was the mandate that we started with. So we've had to follow protocol, we've had to follow the ways it's done. And we may not, as a council, agree on that. We may not, as a town, agree on it. And that's why the hearing of objections, I love those because people stand up and give you their opinion as to what they think. And there are more people in this town that are experts or in the field and understand more. I mean, the designations and whatnot, they have changed. But if you look at it, there's some places that were left out because they've either divided the property or whatever's happened. And you go back, we have to redo those maps all the time because of little idiosyncrasies that are missed. But we try to catch them all. It's just not possible. We're human. We're going to make a mistake here too. But last night, I think, with the people that came last night, it was a good opportunity to hear. It was, with some of the comments, I have to say that I wasn't impressed. But that's just my personal opinion. It's not what council has said, because we haven't had a chance to meet after that. I think the intention was we get it on the table, we put it together. This is not etched in stone. This can be changed. What people don't want to do is do the change. They want it to be perfect the first time. I don't know of any document that's been perfect the first time. We've had to go in and make changes, or add this, or add that. You have to understand it's a working document. Even if it's a completed document, we still can make changes to it. Whether we're the council right now that makes changes to it, or whether the next council comes on. We haven't been pushing to get this done. We have tried to fulfill it so that the next council doesn't feel the burden that we're feeling from the public, and it is a burden. We're willing to listen, we're willing to make changes.
That was Deputy Mayor of the town of St. Andrews, Kate Akagi, speaking to me about the public hearing of objections.
We are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be looking at a change to virtual healthcare in New Brunswick.
They were not selected because the proposal that we received from another proponent met the requirements stronger.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon. So the province sort of landed itself in a bit of confusion this week after the River Valley Sun, a local independent newspaper in Woodstock, broke the news that eVisit NB, the virtual platform that people use for virtual healthcare in the province, their contract was not renewed.
Okay, so shout out first of all to our friend Teresa Blackburn at River Valley Sun. We love the independents who keep local alive, so good work breaking a story. The controversy has to do with the fact that a lot of people assume this means jobs leaving the province. So tell us exactly what went on.
Well, it was sort of confusion because eVisit MB was developed by Dr. Hanif Chatur, who is in Woodstock. And so it is a New Brunswick-based creation. And it was born out of COVID-19 when people couldn't access doctors' offices or were sick and didn't want to leave or were isolating because of isolation orders. And so they developed that quite quickly. They didn't go to a request for proposals because they wanted this to sort of just be part of the healthcare network to allow people to continue to have access to healthcare. And it is operated through Maple, who people might recognize because you have to go through the app and sort of get to eVisit MB. And so it stayed around after COVID because it acted as a stopgap between those who didn't have a primary care provider and providing them with access to some semblance of care.
Okay, and I should say I've even used eVisit because I've had times when my doctor's been away and you're looking for that speedy appointment just to get medical attention. I've even had the chance to use it right here when I'm at work and thinking I'm coming down with something and needing some help. So it has been a service that many New Brunswickers have used. But again, what was the province's decision when it came to dealing with their provider that they had gone with at the time of COVID?
Yeah, so there were Deputy Minister Eric Beaulieu came to public accounts this week and faced actually Woodstock Heartland MLA Bill Hogan, who people might remember was the former education minister under the Blaine Higgs government. And so he sort of started that conversation off talking about eVisit NB and sort of they worked their way through the process. And so the department decided that, or the province decided that they wanted to go to a request for proposal because there were standards that were not, or requirements that were not being met. So we're talking about integration. So Beaulieu said 50% of people who were using eVisit MB had already had a primary care provider, right? So bridging the gap in communication between eVisit MB and the primary care provider, but also integration between eVisit MB and pharmacies was not happening. So a doctor with eVisit MB could have prescribed someone a prescription that may conflict with another prescription that they're already taking. So that was part of the problem. In 2024, the Official Languages Commissioner, Shirley McLean, received a number of complaints about eVisit MB not sufficiently meeting its requirements under the Official Languages Act. And in fact, she came back out, I think, earlier this week and said that her office continues to receive complaints and that patients who are francophone were told that if they chose to receive healthcare services virtually in French, they would face longer wait times. So Beaulieu said it was about improving integration, also meeting that language requirement, but also allowing patients to book appointments directly. So they went to a request for proposals, and what that means is contractors submit bids, and there's a a sort of metric that is applied, and so the one that I would guess met the most requirements would be selected. And so Found Ever, which is a Luxembourg-based group, met the requirements, in Beaulieu's words, stronger than eVisit MB. And I want to be clear, eVisit MB was aware of the request for proposal before anyone else because of their relationship. They submitted like everybody else, and they were not selected.
Okay, and if they were aware of the proposal, I'm sure they've also had these concerns about the service they were provided brought to light for them prior to that.
Yeah, so I think they were aware, and I did receive a statement from Dr. Chatour saying that he was disappointed by the province's decision not to renew their contract, and that he addressed the concerns about language in 2024, and then in January of 2025, he said the Department of Health said that they were satisfied with the changes that he made in regards to specifically the language issue. And so he is disappointed, but it sort of sounds like the decision has been made. They are currently in negotiations. The Department of Health would not confirm to me or the Courier what company they were in contract negotiations with, but both the River Valley Sun and CPC New Brunswick have reported that it is the Found Ever group.
Okay, so we don't know yet exactly if how much cost is a factor as well, and to what degree jobs that were once in New Brunswick might go elsewhere, or are they staying here? We don't have those details as of yet. Okay, so a story to keep following.
Absolutely, and we may never sort of really know the details of the contract, just because those types of things are often protected under competition and legislation, but certainly the public accounts shed a lot more light on the process and how it worked.
I'm going to return to eVisit MB because I still have questions around that, and you're correct that during my time in government, we had a philosophy of New Brunswick first. And we focused on New Brunswick companies and what they had to offer for us. So the RFP, there was no direction given regarding the RFP from the Premier's office.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Hogan. I've asked for some specific language. While there is no direction from the Premier's office in terms of what's in an RFP, the approach to an RFP, which would be standard. That is not the level that we would get in the past, but I do know that there was specific direction on an overall procurement to avoid certain parts of the world in terms of awarding contracts. That's a general approach. And you know which part of the world I'm referring to when I say that. Our Premier's been very, very clear that the focus is on Canadian companies, New Brunswick-based companies, when at all possible. The approach here, the priority from day one, was improved services to New Brunswickers, a more integrated approach to healthcare.
And the Premier was aware that the RFP was being issued?
I informed the Premier's office, yes.
You informed the Premier's office. What direction did you receive from the Minister in terms of this RFP?
The only direction that I would recall, Mr. Hogan, is again that prioritize an integrated approach to providing care to New Brunswickers.
Thank you. You know, I believe that we have some of the brightest minds in the world in New Brunswick. We're leaders in cybersecurity. It just mystifies me why, if we had these concerns with eVisit NB, that we couldn't work with our brightest minds to resolve these issues. And I guess I just don't understand what opportunities did actually take place with eVisit NB to resolve this triage 811 type issue.
I agree with you in terms of the bright minds that we have in New Brunswick and the very capable people that we have in this province. I would reiterate the fact that the RFP is a very open process, request for proposal that any organization can submit. And the organization that is currently providing the services was able to submit and be evaluated just like everyone else within that process. It would have made my life and the life of government much easier had the same proponent that is offering it today been the successful proponent, providing the best service going forward. They were not selected because the proposal that we received from another proponent met the requirements stronger.
So I hope that it's not the lowest bidder is what we're talking about here. And I'm a little confused because on my political Facebook page, the Premier said that she had questions about the RFP process. So if this was discussed with the Premier's office, there's clearly a lack of communication or a gap somewhere with how that could happen. And I'm still a little bit confused. You know, you looked at 500,000 visits and you found a number of individuals with acute needs that had extremely high number of visits. Do we do the same thing with individuals that are not attached to a primary care provider in our emergency rooms?
I heard two questions there. The first one is it would be highly unusual for any Premier at any time to get into the details of what an RFP is going to look for. That is left to departments that have subject matter experts that design an RFP on what will be the services that are required to provide the best service to the population of New Brunswick. So it would be highly unusual for the Premier to know the details. Her to have questions is appropriate, not an issue. In terms of when you speak about, is there a similar process for individuals that visit the ER multiple times? I am confident that Dr. Desrosiers, when she is here later on this week, will speak about an initiative that Vitalité led, and I believe is still in place, of looking at individuals that visit the ER multiple times and how do we provide the service that they need. So while it's not done on a let's look at all the visits, it's done on an individual by individual basis within the RHAs because it's part of the integrated system that we are looking for in terms of virtual care.
That was Deputy Minister of the Department of Health, Eric Beaulieu, answering questions from members of the Legislative Assembly at Public Accounts. So we sort of understand now how that process played out and why they've made this decision. The group that they've chosen, both the Minister of Health, Dr. John Dornan, and Mr. Beaulieu said has 150 employees in New Brunswick. They have strong Canadian roots, and so what they're doing there is they're trying to reassure New Brunswickers that despite the fact that they've left a Woodstock-based business, there is a presence here in terms of employment. And it's interesting that, you know, David Kuhn made a few points about integration because he was talking about, you know, well, it's sort of broken. The healthcare system is already broken. So when you're talking about integration, that sort of seems like you're trying to integrate into something that is already broken. And one of the examples that was given during the many questions that Mr. Beaulieu was facing was that one individual accessed eVisit MB 90 times in a single year. So that speaks to that individual's level of care needs. And so there's no continuum of care happening for those folks. And so those folks need to be identified through that integration. And so that was the point that he was sort of making in terms of that. He did say to the committee members at Public Accounts, this was never a conversation about not offering virtual healthcare. No one is in dispute about the integral role that virtual healthcare plays in the grand scheme of things, but how can they move it forward in a way that best benefits New Brunswickers of all needs and all languages?
Okay, I'm still trying to figure out if I was wrong to use eVisit. I think I maybe had done it twice. Yeah, I do have a doctor, but I think that it was recommended that I go about that way when my doctor was out of town. But
I don't think that you should feel bad. I think there is certainly information that we know to be true, which is that it's not often easy to get into a primary care provider. So certainly some of the people who would be using eVisit MB are using it because they can't access a doctor at their primary health practice. And so they might have an urgent need that they need dealt with. That's why pharmacists have sort of expanded their ability to work with certain conditions, because some things don't require a doctor, but you could go to a pharmacist and have that conversation and they can write you a prescription for what you need. And so we're sort of at a point now where we're moving forward with this group. The eVisit MB platform will remain available to New Brunswickers until the end of March. The health minister said that he wants, the goal or the aim is to ensure a seamless transition to avoid any disruption to the services that New Brunswickers are receiving currently.
And I'm going to point out, now that not in my own self-defense, but because we are in this process right now of having these collaborative care clinics open across the province, but right now we're in the early stages of that. So I think, in a collaborative care clinic, hopefully in the future, you'll be able to get an appointment maybe same day as calling your family doctor, and you might see a nurse practitioner instead. But a lot of time when you call your family doctor, you're looking at an appointment that might be a month down the road. So eVisit for that purpose, I think, or if your doctor's out of town, could be the reason why 50% of people using it have had a family doctor.
But it goes back to what I said earlier, right? It's been acting as a stopgap between both patients who don't have a primary care provider or those who can't access their primary care provider in an orderly or timely fashion. One of the goals of the Liberal government is to not only establish these collaborative care clinics, as you've mentioned, but to have those clinics staffed in a way that allows a patient who calls for an appointment to be seen within 5 days. So that is their goal. I will say that the Holt government is sort of on an uphill climb with these clinics. St. Stephen, for example, has only been able to take 300 patients off the list. They're still inside the Charlotte County Hospital while they work on the King Street property, but they can't take any more on. They can't add any more doctors because there's no space to fit them. And that clinic has been open for a year. So there's a lot of push and pull here. And the other thing that I would say is, entering into or introducing uncertainty into New Brunswickers about healthcare is never going to be something that lands well. Everything is already so uncertain. And so I'm sure that when this arrived at people's doorsteps, either through social media or the newspaper, that introduction of uncertainty about virtual healthcare certainly may have spooked a few people. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to take a look at what the team is doing next week. Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth, taking a look at what is in store for next week. I know it's winter, but still keeping busy.
Yeah, like you said in the earlier part of the show, you were in St. Stephen with our Florence Mitchell, and I was in St. Andrews. So I missed what happened at St. Stephen's Committee of the Whole, and so now I have to go back and watch and see what happened and see if there's anything in there that I need to follow up on with our good friends in St. Stephen.
I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'll let you watch. And then we'll talk. I will be heading to Eastern Charlotte Council next week. And Jonathan Britton and I, if you watch TV Bingo, you know Jonathan Britton from there. He's also my co-host on Good Day from the Bay. We went to Graminan last week. And coming up next, we're sitting down with Vic Thiessen. He's from the St. Andrews Film Society, and he is going to be talking to us about how the St. Andrews Film Society, this is extremely cool for film buffs, was contacted by Toronto International Film Festival to become a mini festival outpost. So what's going to be happening here in this theater right after Oscar season? We're leading up to the Oscars now, but they will be in March, so March 8th to 22nd, having 3 films from this year's Toronto Film Festival playing here right downstairs at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Theatre. So I think it's one of only a couple locations in New Brunswick to be a part of the TIFF Festival. If anyone's ever been to TIFF, it's just the most exciting thing. It really is. Canada has made a name for itself. We already are the place where they film a lot of movies, but Toronto Film Fest is really the festival. If you want your film to be nominated for an Oscar, it's got to go there. And they also have a ton of really cool indie films, documentaries. It's just one of the most special things to have and to be proud of as a Canadian, how important that festival is. So to have it come here, for me, is just, I'm over the moon. It's just hugely exciting. So big deal. Also coming up, I gotta tell you, I don't know what you're doing on Family Day, but there is the Kiwanis Costume Carnival on the ice just downstairs in here too. You don't have to go very far. We can go skating. Everyone wears costumes. There's prizes for all the kids that come, so it's a lot of fun.
I don't know that I have a costume for that, but I do have hockey skates, so maybe we'll have some fun there. I'm excited for that. That sounds good. I'm far away from my family, so I may as well spend it with the folks at St. Andrews.
Yeah, what's going on in your world next week?
Well, certainly we're going to be reviewing a lot of the councils. I'm going to take a look at Eastern Charlotte, St. Stephen. My primary focus is very much municipal government. I will say we did write and speak about Bill 23, which is the right to a healthy environment. But what we did learn is that the government has changed and updated its drinking water quality standards to align with Health Canada, and that information and data is now available in a new public portal. So I will also try to be writing about that, speaking to the varying experts, and then trying to also get an update on the condition of the water and the progress on a new water source in Blacks Harbour.
All right, well, so another interesting and, dare I say, dense week using the magic word of this episode, but it's always a pleasure to sit beside you and to have these conversations.
Thanks for watching This Week Uncut. We'll see you next week. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth.